The most dangerous thing in your kitchen might be the glass of water you forgot on the counter overnight. Not because it turned toxic, but because your brain already decided it looked suspicious. Meanwhile, for most of human history, people drank straight from rivers, springs, muddy pools, and hollow trees. No filters, no chlorine, no warning label. So how did ancient humans actually survive without clean water? The answer isn't that their stomachs were magical or their immune systems were indestructible. Ancient people got sick. Many died. But they were also skilled observers, living in landscapes they understood far better than most of us understand our own plumbing. They learned where water moved, where it settled, when it spoiled, and which sources were worth the risk. Survival began with choosing the least terrible option available. Before wells or filters existed, evolution first had to solve a more basic problem: keeping an active primate alive in hot, dry landscapes. Water isn't optional. It carries nutrients, regulates temperature, and keeps blood from becoming dangerously thick. Severe dehydration becomes dangerous within days, so our ancestors' movements were tied directly to water. Part of the solution was already built into the body itself. Humans are unusually effective sweaters. Sweating let our ancestors stay active in heat during long hunts, but it came with a constant cost: water loss. Evolution gave us excellent cooling, then quietly handed us the bill. Early humans also got water through food. Fruits, roots, meat, and blood all carry real moisture. In some environments, food supplied a meaningful share of daily hydration, reducing the need to drink from risky sources. But food moisture was a supplement, not a replacement. A juicy root helps, it isn't a reservoir. The real prerequisite for survival was behavioral intelligence. Humans learned entire landscapes socially. Older group members remembered which springs survived the dry season and where rain collected in rock depressions. This knowledge wasn't trivia. It was infrastructure, stored entirely in human memory. Camps were placed within practical reach of water, but not directly on top of it, where insects and predators gathered. People visited a source, collected what they needed, and retreated to safer ground. Before humans cleaned water, they did something more fundamental. They built a mental map of risk. The first water technology wasn't a pot or a well. It was simply knowing exactly where to go. Finding water was only half the problem. The other half was deciding if it would hydrate you or start a war with your intestines. Ancient humans didn't understand bacteria or parasites. Nobody looked at a pond and diagnosed pathogen levels. But they could recognize patterns. And evolution rewards creatures that notice when certain choices repeatedly end badly. Moving water was often preferable to stagnant water. A spring from rock felt more reliable than a warm, sun-baked puddle. Clear water wasn't automatically safe, and muddy water wasn't automatically deadly. But appearance and smell gave real clues. Animal trails probably helped too, often leading people toward hidden springs or seasonal pools. Though following animals wasn't perfect, a gazelle could drink from something that would devastate a human stomach entirely. Vegetation offered another clue. Clusters of moisture-loving plants often signaled groundwater nearby. People also dug beneath dry stream beds, letting water slowly seep into a shallow hole they'd created. The first attempt often looked like soup. After sediment settled, the upper layer became genuinely drinkable. Rock cavities and tree hollows collected rainwater. Dew could be gathered carefully from leaves at dawn. None of these methods guaranteed safety. They simply improved the odds, and those odds improved through memory. Someone drank from the shaded spring and stayed healthy. Someone else drank downstream from a carcass and deeply regretted it. Both experiences became valuable information, passed forward through the group. Humans are exceptional at turning individual suffering into shared group knowledge. Stories, warnings, and taboos preserved practical rules long before anyone understood exactly why those rules worked. Don't drink there after heavy rain. Let the mud settle first. Collect from the upstream side. This was prehistoric water treatment in its earliest form, not sterilizing, but reading, testing, and remembering. Eventually, humans stopped merely chasing water and began forcing the landscape to provide it on demand. That shift shows up clearly in the archaeological record, with wells. Some of the earliest examples come from Neolithic farming communities in what is now Germany, dated to roughly 5000 BC. These weren't crude pits. Builders carefully shaped oak timbers and joined them into precise structures reaching groundwater. A well completely changed the survival equation. Surface water is exposed, contaminated by animals, waste, and sunlight. Groundwater, by contrast, had often passed through layers of soil and rock, filtering out some contamination naturally. Not perfectly safe, but compared to an open pool, a protected well offered something far more stable and controllable. Building one required real understanding, locating groundwater, organizing labor, and preventing the shaft from collapsing. In other words, the earliest wells weren't just holes, they were genuine community projects. They also reveal how settled life intensified the water problem entirely. Mobile hunter-gatherers could simply leave when a source failed. Farmers with fields and homes couldn't easily do that. Reliable water became part of architecture itself, determining where villages could grow and how long people could stay. The puddle had officially become a public utility. Here's where the story gets genuinely tricky. Did prehistoric humans deliberately treat their water before drinking it? They had some of the necessary tools. Fire came long before pottery, and hot stones could bring water to a boil. But proving people boiled water specifically to kill invisible pathogens is a much harder claim to confirm. Boiling leaves very little archaeological trace. A hearth only proves someone made fire, nothing more specific. People likely heated water mainly for cooking, softening food, or preparing medicine. Disease reduction may have been a side effect. They didn't need germ theory to notice some practices simply produced fewer unpleasant consequences. The same uncertainty applies to straining water through cloth, sand, or charcoal to remove visible particles. These methods could remove mud and insects, but clearer water didn't necessarily mean truly safe water. Then there's the popular claim that ancient humans simply had stronger immune systems entirely. They may have developed some partial immunity to local pathogens, but this wasn't biological armor. Contaminated water still caused diarrhea, parasites, dehydration, and death, especially among children. And no, people didn't universally solve this by simply drinking beer instead of water. Beer required grain, labor, containers, and usually water in the first place. No one carried a keg across the savannah. The honest conclusion is less dramatic, but genuinely more interesting. Ancient people likely used many water-improving techniques across different places and periods. The evidence is simply uneven. Once water became dependable, it stopped being just something people drank and became something societies organized around. A permanent well could turn a simple campsite into a full village. A reservoir could carry an entire community through the dry season. The moment humans began controlling water at scale, hydration quietly became politics. Someone had to dig. Someone had to maintain it. Someone had to decide who drank first when levels dropped. Across the ancient world, communities built cisterns, cut channels into stone, and transported water in ceramic vessels. In cities, fountains and wells became genuine social centers, where people exchanged news and settled disputes. Water also acquired sacred meaning. Springs and wells were often connected to gods, healing, and purification. This wasn't just superstition floating above practical life. A sacred spring was also a carefully maintained communal resource. Religion sometimes functioned as environmental management, simply told through better storytelling. Medicine became involved too. Ancient physicians noticed water quality varied by source, season, taste, and smell. Water could be settled, strained through fabric, exposed to heat, or mixed with other substances entirely. A cloth strainer later associated with Hippocrates aimed to remove visible impurities from boiled water. Not a modern purifier, but it reflected something important. People were no longer just choosing water. They were modifying it. Large states pushed this transformation even further, building aqueducts, pipelines, and public fountains. These systems required surveying, engineering, taxation, labor, and real administration. They didn't eliminate waterborne disease entirely. Even Roman water networks remained vulnerable to contamination. But the broader achievement was extraordinary. Scattered knowledge became shared, functioning infrastructure. Clean water was never simply discovered. It was negotiated, engineered, ritualized, and defended. Today, clean water arrives so quietly, most of us only notice it when it stops. You turn a handle, and centuries of engineering quietly appear in a single glass. Protected reservoirs, treatment plants, pipes, and entire professions devoted to keeping your water safe. It feels automatic because civilization has carefully hidden all the effort behind it. Ancient humans had no such illusion. They understood water as a genuine relationship with the landscape itself. A spring could weaken. A pool could spoil. A river could flood or carry waste from somewhere upstream. Survival depended on attention. remembering seasons, recognizing plants, tasting cautiously, and listening when an elder said, "Not that one." This didn't mean they were naturally immune or somehow compatible with parasites. Many people became sick. Many children died. The success of our ancestors wasn't that dirty water failed to harm them. It was that enough people learned from it. They turned experience into warnings, warnings into customs, customs into technology, and technology into lasting institutions. A shallow hole became a lined well. A storage pit became a cistern. A channel became an aqueduct. So how did ancient humans survive without clean water? They didn't have perfectly clean water. They had judgment, cooperation, and accumulated knowledge. And every time you reject a glass because it's been sitting out for 6 hours, remember your ancestors once judged drinking water by whether the frog inside still looked healthy. We inherited their caution. We simply outsourced the puddle.